Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. Today's guests are Mark Kelly and Bob Farley, photographer Bob Farley, writer Mark Kelly. They've recently published a book called Back to Nature. And it's a lovely photograph of a fall shot of Ruffner Mountain on the eastern side of Birmingham. I grew up on the western side of Birmingham, so I didn't spend a lot of time at Ruffner Mountain. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Doing well.
Tell us a little bit about each, one at a time though, because tell me a little bit about yourself and how this project came about.
Well, I'm a writer. I've written pretty extensively about the history of this city, which I continue to find fascinating. So I started going to Ruffner Mountain in college back in the early 80s.
You grew up in Birmingham?
Grew up in Russellville, Alabama. Came here to go to school at Samford. And started going to Ruffner at that time and then got away from it for a little while. And then started having children and taking my children to Ruffner Mountain. And through some of that, met Bob and his wife, Michelle. And so we're sitting around drinking beer one day.
Where great creative thoughts always come from.
You can't ask for better. So we're drinking beer with our friend Melanie Colvin, who is the designer of this book. And that's really where we came up with the idea that we needed to write a book about the history of Ruffner Mountain that would include beautiful photographs and hopefully fully tell the story not just of the Nature Center but of the mountain and about the history of the city.
And how about you, Bob? How did you end up? I know how you ended up in this project.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my wife and I, Michelle, we moved to Roebuck Springs, which is a neighborhood that butts right up against the mountain, and we started going there more and more because we were closer, and we both joined the board of directors at the Nature Center. It's a nonprofit nature center, and we got involved with that, and we didn't have really money to help them financially or access to people that had money to help them financially. So we started doing projects, and she's a naturalist and I'm a photographer, obviously, and so we worked on photographs for their archives as well as for greeting cards and promotional projects to help get the word out about Ruffner. And then when we met Mark and Melanie, and he told you the rest, we got into a conversation about what else we could do. And that was just a logical step from what we were doing to something a little bit bigger.
Well, I'm somewhat ashamed, not a lot ashamed, but I've never been to Ruffner Mountain other than to the horse track, which is near, right?
Yeah, near the Nature Center, where the building is, and kind of the campus is off of 81st Street, at the end of 81st Street. Actually.
When you say the Nature Center, it's a standing building where you go in and there's like Vulcan has a display of its history.
Yeah.
Is that what's there?
Yeah, they have a meeting space. That's where their offices are. There's a nursery there for growing native plants. There's a campus with its gardens that are surrounded that are used for educational purposes, and a pavilion and a picnic area and bathrooms, and then some nature exhibits from snakes to turtles and owls and things like that. And so they do programs there, environmental education programs. Schools go up there. And that's basically their mission is environmental education and preservation of the mountain.
And Mark, my grandfather immigrated to this country at the turn of the last century. He went to work in Margaret, Alabama, which is on that side of town, because there were coal mines there. So does Ruffner Mountain have a mining history that morphed into what it is now?
Yeah, very much so.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Ruffner has iron ore deposits.
Just like Red Mountain?
Just like Red Mountain. Ruffner is part of the Red Mountain Formation. There's a gap between the main part of the Red Mountain Formation and what we know as Ruffner Mountain. It's Red Gap, which is out in Gate City. You can still drive through it.
That's just on the other side of Eastwood Mall.
That's correct, yeah. And so That was mined beginning in the mid to late 1880s. There's a fellow named William Henry Ruffner who was hired by the Georgia Pacific Railroad to come to Jefferson County and help them identify a route for their railroad and where, relative to where some of the mining deposits were. The only way into Jefferson County from the east at that time, he came from Virginia, was through Red Gap. And so he wrote later of riding through Red Gap and being able to see all these outcrops of iron ore on what's now Ruffner Mountain.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so did he set up camp there?
No,
was there settlement there?
No, he came in. There was settlement later. There was a mining settlement. You know, you had some of the miners. There's still remnants of some of the housing that the miners lived in out around Ruffner Mountain, and other outbuildings and structures that were used in the mining as well. It was mined from about 1887 until the late 1920s, and then
Really?
again briefly from about 1949 into the early 50s.
And mining for iron ore, which ultimately was made into steel?
Correct. Iron first and then steel after the steel process was invented. And then you also have limestone at Ruffner Mountain. You know, the main ingredients of iron, you mentioned one, which is coal, and then you have iron ore and you have limestone. Birmingham, this entire area, those nowhere else in the world are those elements found so close together.
Wow.
So that's what made Birmingham, Birmingham.
Hold that thought, okay?
Sure.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with some more stuff about Ruffner Mountain.
Great.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Do not go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. Bob Farley, Mark Kelly are our guests today. Have written a book about Ruffner Mountain. And we've been talking about Ruffner Mountain and how Ruffner Mountain became a part of the history of Birmingham. Now, you've discussed how it was founded and what it has that makes it special. After we mined it, what happened? Did it just sort of sit around for a while?
Well, it did. You know, the mining stopped in the early 1950s, and what you had then
was it tapped out, or did it just stop?
Well, it was fairly well tapped out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that stuff doesn't grow back, does it?
It does not. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Okay.
And so, you know, you had neighborhood kids playing up there, which you'd always had, even when it was mined. In the book, I talked to a number of people who played up on the mountain as kids, but it really did sort of sit dormant for a while. And then in 1977, there was a developer who wanted to build apartments just about where the Nature Center building sits now on the East Lake side of the mountain. And so the neighborhood, primarily neighborhood people, decided to try to stop this apartment development. They went to City Hall to ask for their help.
Who was our mayor
stopping
back
it.
then?
David Vann was mayor. David Herring was on the city council, and Herring really took the lead, and Vann was very interested too. And they first were successful in stopping the apartment development, and then they decided, well, you know, we should try to obtain this property and get the city into this and start a nature preserve. It was 28 acres, and the city agreed to acquire that 28 acres. And then later on, after Mayor Arrington became mayor, he was also very enthusiastic about what they were doing at Ruffner. And through about the late 1980s, over a period of 10, 12 years, he went from 28 acres to what it is today, over 1,000 acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
One of the largest urban nature preserves in the country.
And Bob, lots of trees to photograph?
Lots of trees to photograph.
Lots of wildlife?
Yeah, there's lots of wildlife. We don't have any deer, or a few deer, but it's mostly foxes and birds and small
Coyote,
animals like that. So
fox?
nothing's going to get you when you're out there.
No snakes?
No,
Got some
there's
snakes.
lots of
Some
snakes,
snakes.
but
Oh,
most of them are non-venomous, so you don't have to worry about them. Just let them be, and they'll let you be.
So before the book, I have a friend who's a relative, Jim Willett. You may know him. He's a photographer, and he photographs a lot on the Vulcan Trail and probably Ruffner Mountain. Were you inclined to go up there and photograph from a photographer's perspective because of what it had to offer?
Oh yeah, it's got
prior to the idea. Prior to the beer drinking.
Yeah, prior to the beer drinking. Yeah, I mean it's got you go up. It's got some great views of the city. I mean, I've gone up there on 4th of July and watched the fireworks. And even though they're small because they're way over at Vulcan, it's kind of fun because the foreground of all the neighborhoods, they do their own little fireworks show. So leading up to the big show, it's kind of like a tributary to the big fireworks. So it's kind of fun to be up there for that. The quarry, which is where they did limestone, is a fun place to photograph because depending on what time of year is, there's different kind of wildflowers bloom in different types of trees. There's 12 plus miles worth of trails, and off those are old mining sites that have these, the most obvious thing are the crushers, and they look like big coffee grinders, and you kind of walk down the trail and all of a sudden they pop up and you see them, and you can walk around them, you can look in them. So those are kind of the fascinating remnants of the mining history. And then it's just a pretty place to be.
They charge admission to get in?
No, it's a nonprofit. They rely on people donating money. There's no charge to get in. The boundaries are kind of porous, so it'd be kind of hard to enforce that because there's the main entrance at the campus, but then there's 2 different public accesses off of Ruffner Road on the Irondale side, one at the ballparks and the other one further down. That gives you access to different parts of the park.
Wow.
Preserve, excuse me.
Have you had an opportunity to see where it gets most of its funding? I take it gets it from just charitable contributions.
The city
and the city.
Yeah, the city provides a big chunk of funding, the largest single donor, but otherwise foundations, private individuals, people who love the fact that we have this resource in our community.
So the book, which I showed earlier, I won't reach down and grab it right now, but it's available for purchase.
Correct.
Would make a great coffee table book, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I hope it's a little, the concept was we hope it's a little more than a coffee table book. There's a lot of text in there, so I hope people actually will read it. A lot of history in there of the city and of Ruffner, but it's a beautiful book as well. So the idea was kind of a hybrid of a, standard kind of history and beautiful photographs and illustrations.
Does the text of the book track the history that you gave us a very short version of?
It does.
Early on?
Starts 500 million years ago with the formation
the Pleistocene era?
That's right. Even a little earlier than that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the cut in Red Mountain, just as an aside, had some sea fossils in it.
Yes.
Which they kind of walled off for a while, but they let it kind of go into shambles.
Well, there's a great picture in the book. You can go to the top of, or very near the top of Ruffner Mountain where you look out on the city. But there is a limestone boulder up there, and if you look at it closely, you can see the fossils of sea creatures from 500 million years ago.
Creepy.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break with that.
All right.
I get chill bumps thinking that we were still Earth at that point in time.
That's right.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We're talking about Ruffner Mountain and its history. So there's a nature center up there.
There is a nature center. It is it's Ruffner Mountain Nature Preserve, and it's operated by the Ruffner Mountain Nature Coalition, which was formed in 1977, and which has overseen the growth of this facility from 28 acres to over 1,000 acres, has run educational programs, has really served, I think, a pretty vital need in this community for all of that 40 plus years.
And are there guided tours of the Nature Center, or is it self-guided?
Well, it's primarily self-guided. There are tours that are part of educational programs.
Yeah, and they offer periodic. You go to their calendar, and there are nature programs. There's wildflower walks. There's mining guided hikes. There's events every once in a while that focus on different things. Like they had a night festival last year, which looked at moths and stuff. But there was art and there was entertainment associated with that.
So there's a website, I trust, with a calendar of events?
Yes.
RuffnerMountain.org.
RuffnerMountain.org. And if you go there, you can see. I suppose it'd be a good spot. You could maybe even have a birthday party up there for some group of people.
Yeah, there's
maybe
a
not
pavilion.
Adults
It's a great spot for any kind of gathering like that.
Well, it's fascinating work that you've done in bringing this to the attention of our citizens. I know, as I said before, for me personally, I've never been, but I feel like it's in my future, so I'm going to go. Good. How do you get there?
You can go out First Avenue North to 81st Street and follow that up to...
It just ends.
Yeah, it just ends.
It just ends. You bump right up into it.
You just drive right into the bottom of the mountain.
Correct.
Basically, yeah, and there's parking.
You know, people that live in mountainous towns call these hills.
Yeah, they are. But, you know.
They used to be big, way back when.
Back when those sea fossils were wandering around.
that thing was over 10,000 feet tall then. So
the limestone piece?
The mountain itself.
Oh, the mountain itself.
Yeah.
What is it now?
It's a little over 1,000. Yeah.
Where'd it go?
Above sea level.
Oh, the ground caught up with it.
The ground caught up with it. That's right. That's why you have what used to be on the bottom of the sea is now 1,000 feet up in the air, right?
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I learned that about Sicily and North Africa. Under the sea, they touch.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm Sicilian. We've been occupied by every known everything.
That's right.
Well, thanks for being with us. This is the book, Back to Nature. Where does someone find their way to get this book?
It's in several of the locally owned bookshops. It's at Alabama Booksmith, where we had the launch event for the book. It's at Little Professor, and it's at several other locally owned bookshops around town. You can also order it from the Ruffner Mountain website at ruffnermountain.org, or you can go up and hike around and buy a book on your way out.
And just so you know, these proceeds, this is not a profit undertaking. These proceeds go for the benefit of Ruffner Mountain. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Well, thank y'all so much for being with us today and enlightening our audience on the things that Ruffner Mountain has to offer. If you had one thing that you were going to recommend that people don't miss at Ruffner Mountain, what would that be?
Well, I would say the overlook, where you hike up and you can look out and see the city skyline in the distance, and you can see those fossils we talked about that are 500 million years old. So I think that sort of encapsulates it.
Is there a rail?
There is no rail. There's remnants of the old mining railroad that you'll see out there. Yeah. But
any Indian
but no, you got to
fossils
hike up there.
Is it steep?
It gets a little steep from time to time.
It's a pretty
I'm getting
moderate.
on up there in
it's
years.
a pretty moderate trail to get out there. It's to go from the Nature Center to the overlook and back is about 3 miles. And most of it's on the ridge, so it's not a lot of ups and downs. And then off that trail, there's other trails that can take you to one of the crushers, one of the mining ruin areas. So you can spend as much time and as slow or as fast as you want to go. It's well marked and it's easy and it can't get lost.
I was going to say.
Hard to get lost. You have to work at getting lost up there.
So I don't have to blaze the trail, as they say. I have
You
to
do
bring
not.
a bunch of ribbons with me or anything
you'd be
to
all
track
right.
my way back.
Correct. I think you'd be
I was going to
perfectly
ask
fine.
Just stay on the trail.
say, believe me, well, you hear these stories, people in the West Coast, some of which I question the validity of. They wander off the trail, and next thing you know, they're on the Today Show.
Yeah, right.
I'm not quite sure.
I think you'll be all right.
You think I can make it?
I think you can do it.
But did you say it had an incline?
Yeah, there's some, it's not super steep, and whatever is steep is not very long, because elevation gain and loss is not significant. But there's a few steep places. But it's
and the trails are marked, and
people love the trails.
Okay.
A lot of trail runners go up there, and they like the fact that the trails are not difficult.
Can you do a bicycle up there too?
No, there's no bicycles in the park in the preserve.
How about pets?
Yes, you can bring a pet, keep them on a leash.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
God
sir.
bless you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. I'm Tommy Spina. We'll see you next Sunday.